welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Entertainment Network. I am your host, Sarah. You've probably noticed it's neither Tuesday nor Friday, bringing this episode to you on a Saturday due to just several things in terms of scheduling, etc. But I'm excited to bring you another returning author interview. As we get started, I do want to remind you, as I always do, to please like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you are either listening to or watching this episode on. It really does help the algorithm get this podcast out to more readers. Another reminder is that if you want to help the podcast in another way, in a monetary way, you can do so by going to gsmcpodcast.info. There you can leave a tip or a donation that not only helps the podcast, it helps the network as a whole. It's greatly appreciated. While you're there, if you want to leave a question or a comment, that's also welcome. I love to hear from you. So if you have something that you want to bring up or ask me or anything, you can do that there, and I'm happy to engage with those questions or comments. But if you do want to support the podcast in a monetary fashion, you could do so by going to gsmcpodcast.info. You see that link next to me in the video. It's also going to be scrolling throughout the episode, so you'll see that at the bottom of the screen as this episode is playing. How is your weekend going so far? How was your last week? Hopefully you had a great week. First week of February, time is just flying through. If your January felt like it lasted 4.5 years, congratulations on making it through. And now it feels like February is just zipping by. But yeah, our week was good. Busy with the tiny terror, as I call him, when we had both dogs before Tallulah died. We wanted to refer to them without using their actual names. We would just say boy dog and girl dog because we had one of each. Well, now we have 2 boy dogs, so we clearly can't do that. So I've started calling them Old Man and Tiny Terror because that's pretty much what they are. The Tiny Terror is doing better. He's actually sitting in my lap right now, hopefully about to think about going to sleep because he's been racing around with the zoomies and he's got to be tired out by this point. But he's doing better with the potty training. I'm grateful for that, but it's a challenge. Do I say that every week? Do I say it's a challenge every week? It's a good challenge. We actually got out last night. We went to dinner with some friends of ours. They wanted to take us to a place that they really like that we'd never been to. So that was fun. It was great to get out, to go to a new to us restaurant. And we had a great meal and even better company. It was a lot of fun and just really nice to reconnect with a couple that we haven't seen in forever. We keep saying, have you seen that meme where it says that, most of adulting is just saying we should get together soon and then 6 months go by? Well, we've been saying that for even longer than that. So it was nice to finally actually get together and hang out. But so that was last night, and then various things. Just now getting around to finally getting this episode up. It was rescheduled, so it should have gone up on Tuesday, but we didn't reschedule until Wednesday due to technical issues for Victory. You can't do an interview, a remote interview if you don't have internet, which was unfortunately the case for her last weekend. So we got together in the middle of the week, which also you can't do an episode in the past. If you record an interview on Wednesday, you can't post it on the previous Tuesday. I don't know. I don't have a TARDIS. I haven't figured that out yet, so I'll put that on my to-do list. At any rate, let's talk about the book. I have returning guest Victory Witherkeigh joining me this week. We're talking about The Demon. It is the sequel to the book The Girl. Let me give you the description of The Demon. The demon is now in full possession of the girl's body and is starting her journey in Berkeley, California. She should be thrilled and ecstatic. The plan worked. Except she doesn't remember the plan. The demon has memories of the girl's life and vague impressions of a deal made with the Filipino warrior Lapu-Lapu. She reconnects with her former master, Death, and discovers that her bargain went against his will. Death's punishment is beyond her comprehension, enduring the cruelties of morality and leaving her imprisoned in the former girl's university life. Life experiences, toxic friendships, emotional and physical attachments, and finally heartbreak prove sadistic even for a demon. Can a demon have an identity crisis? What happens when the demon shows more independence of thought and understanding than the cycle of dependency? Death isn't the only one waiting to find out. That is the description of the demon. As I said, it's the sequel to The Girl, and if you may want to go back and listen to that episode. You know what? I didn't look to see when that episode aired. I will do that by the end of this episode so you can have an idea of where to look. But if you just, do a search for Victory on any platform where you're listening to, in that case, listening to, that was prior to the audio, then you would be able to find that first interview and learn more about The Girl, because that is very important to this book, wherein the demon has a deal with the girl's family, and you learn more about that in the first book. Look, tiny terror, he's making his presence known. They have a deal, and in this book, the demon has now fully usurped the girl's personality. So we have the same character, kind of like if you were watching a movie or a TV series, the same actor would be playing the girl, except that now the girl is the demon, and the demon is a freshman at UC Berkeley, which this is technically it's dark, it's horror, but you get a lot of humor in the fact that this demon is now a freshman at UC Berkeley and is going through the 4 years of college life. It feels that it's nothing like Buffy, but you know how Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, that show kind of showed it was less about the monsters and more about just the craziness that is life as a teenager. Well, now you've got a demon who is thousands of years old, but can't remember fully being a demon and is now trying to, has vague memories of it, but now has to navigate college life. And there are moments where it's amusing because we've probably all been in similar situations, not being able to remember being a demon, but trying to figure out and navigate new transition life in college or life in a new place, etc. So there's some dark humor in that, and there's some lighter humor around that as well, but it is horror, just so that you are aware of the genre of the book. I'm going to let Victory talk more about this book. Again, this one's called The Demon. The author is Victory Witherkeigh. Let's go now to that. Oh, one more note. So been doing the videos for almost a year and had never had anybody just want to do audio, not video, and now we've had two. So this is another one that is just audio. You're going to see my logo and Victory's animated, not animated, but what's the word I'm looking for? It's a drawing. And so you're going to be seeing that instead of us actually speaking to one another. So you can still have it on video, but you'll, just go do something and listen to the actual interview. It's interesting that I've now had two, but that's life, and you roll with the punches and move along and get on with things. So enjoy the video. Again, it's The Demon. The author is Victory Witherkeigh. Hi, Victory. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's great to be here.
Thanks for coming back, and I'm excited to talk to you. We're going to talk about The Demon this time, but before we get to the book, if you wouldn't mind sharing just a little bit about yourself. Maybe people didn't hear the first interview, maybe they need a refresher, just so they can get to know you a bit.
No problem. So I am Victory Witherkeigh. I am an AAPI author, originally from the Los Angeles, California area. And yeah, I write primarily in dark fantasy, horror, thriller genre, predominantly for, the YA audience, but I welcome any and all readers. And yes, I'm here to talk about The Demon, which is my second novel, and it's a companion to my debut novel, The Girl.
Yes. So let's actually start with The Girl, which we talked about the last time you were here. But if you can just kind of recap that a little bit for people that, maybe aren't familiar with the series.
Okay. So The Girl is a young adult novel, debuted back in, oh gosh, 2022. It is available on most platforms. And the story takes place with a, paraphrasing the title, of a young girl who grows up in a family that believes that she is going to be the harbinger for the end of the world. So that causes a lot of angst and drama, if you can imagine. And it's basically her coming of age story and trying to figure out what is real, what is not, and how to basically grow up in that kind of environment and if she really is, what her family says she is.
Right. Yes. And so that's the girl, and then this one is the demon. So we're getting
Yes.
continuation of the story in some ways, but we're getting a different perspective. So let's do an overview of this book as well.
Yes. So the demon is, the girl takes place in her very formative young years, all the way to the age of 18. And what I found in writing that is like so many coming of age stories are, in that teen angsty years, and in that obviously very biased view of, your teenage emotions and how it feels as a young kid. And, that unreliable narrator of, this is my story and I'm going to take charge of it. But I often felt dissatisfied in the idea that, you get to 18 and suddenly because you're an adult, everything just works out. You all go off to college and it's just magic. And that's really where the question came in is it really magic? Is that too much of a fairy tale that we sell that like once you're 18, you'll be an adult and you'll just make your own choices and everything's going to be great? Because I feel like there are a lot of adults who go, actually, no, that's really not how that story goes. And in fact, it's a lot harder because the fact that you're not a child is now oh, you're not cute anymore. Oh, we don't, now it's just welcome to the real world, kid. Here you are. And so that is really what drove me in asking more questions once I was done with the girl, which is is that really coming of age? I mean, there's so much. I mean, there's some research now about, your brain's not even done developing until 25. Can you, and all the phrases of, well, 30s, the new 20s, and your 40s is really where, you as an adult really own yourself. So I thought, how can we really say it's coming of age? How can you really say to a kid that you're, at 18, like, this is when it'll really kick in and you'll really be good to go? It's actually, maybe our stories need to change a little and talk about at 18 it might just get harder and it might not be just all magic. And what happens when you as an individual realize, oh, I do have now the legal personal freedom, but also financial freedom, and and no boundaries, no one can tell me no. And what do you do with that, especially if you are a young individual who maybe grew up in a very structured or very strict environment, or maybe not the best home life? Those are a lot of bigger problems that I think get glossed over too easily in young adult as just, an easy magical way forward. You'll just be an adult and it'll all work out. Because as an adult, I do feel like as a writer, you do want to change a little bit of the discourse in that and say, maybe at 18, you don't have it all figured out.
I don't think there's any maybe about it, but I mean, some people. Oh my goodness, I absolutely did not have it together at 18. If you did, good job, excellent work, nicely done. I did not. I mean, I wasn't like completely off the edge, but I didn't know what I was doing, and I probably still don't know what I'm doing, but hopefully a little bit better than when I was 18. But yeah, I didn't know what I was doing at 18. That was for darn sure. I'm going to contemplate that. You can contemplate life at 18 while we go to break. When we come back, we will be talking about coming of age and what that means in terms of writing. So you are tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with Victory Witherkeigh. As we get into this second segment, just your last quick reminder to go to gsmcpodcast.info if you want to help the podcast and the network as a whole by leaving a tip or a donation. All of your support is greatly appreciated, no matter what form that support takes. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.info. Before the break, we were talking about the fact that because we're technically, supposedly an adult at 18, we're now supposed to actually know stuff. We're supposed to just be an adult and know how to be an adult. And it's kind of crazy in a lot of different ways. But let's go ahead and return to the conversation with Victory. It's interesting that you bring up this topic because, you know, coming of age stories are really popular. They're a large genre, but I've had several conversations over the last couple of months with different authors kind of about what does that mean what does coming of age even really mean? Because can we still be coming of age, you know, at 20, 30, 50? And what does that look like? Is it still a coming of age story? Do we define that differently?
I think we do because, you know, as so many real life stories have shown, you know, people, whether it's business leaders, artists, you know, I mean, the Grammys were just this past weekend, and, you know, a number of the speeches talked about people who had taken a very safe path, who started off in very normal 9 to 5 jobs and got fired, got laid off, and suddenly found their coming of age in their late 20s, early 30s, where they had to switch careers, where everything that they had worked for was suddenly gone and now had to find a new path. So the term coming of age might be the real nomenclature that we need to change. But I think the best idea of it is almost every day or every year can be a new defining way that your life can take, whether it's your choice or not. So much of, I think, that juxtaposition in our coming of age stories and how popular they are is, yes, of course, we love the idea that, especially as teens, you know, you kind of hang your hat on that so often, is that, oh, once I'm an adult and it's my rules, it'll be so much better than, you know, whatever household you're in. And I mean, I think that's just a natural part of being a teenager and pushing boundaries. And whether you grew up in a great household or not, like, there's just that part of you that wants to say, I want it on my terms. And then, of course, there's the knockback of, oh, when it's all on my terms, yikes, that might not be so fun or as fun as you really thought it would be, especially when you deal with real life adulting, bills, medical issues, friendships, all of those things, relationships over time. So yeah, I think the idea of coming of age being at 18 or when you transition to adulthood is maybe a different fantasy that I'm happy to hear other authors are starting to think about in terms of, wait, especially when you are targeting young adult, or you know, even the category that some people don't dislike, you know, new adult. I think those steps are needed to just address the kind of elephant in the room of, are we really saying at 18 that's just it? You know?
Yeah.
Or that, you know, if you're not in your 20s, you no longer have a journey. I mean, that's just silly. We know that's not true, but our stories somehow don't reflect that.
Yeah. I keep seeing a meme that makes me laugh every time because it's, all the things I considered a punishment as a kid are now the things that I shoot for,
Mm-hmm.
taking a
Yeah.
nap, being home by
Yeah.
9, not going out at
Having
all.
I know having set structured schedules for this is when you work and you're done when you get home and you have playtime and you have relax, all of the things you're like, I'm bored.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I don't remember the last time I could be bored. Or even in the headspace where you could acknowledge boredom, where you're not just, oh, I'm overwhelmed with all the thoughts in my head all the time. Um, those little gifts of everything's new. Even the gift of, wow, I meet new peers my own age every year, and the opportunity to make friendships, and
Hmm.
things like that, where you're like, oh, I used to complain all the time about seeing the same people over and over again, and now just the stability of, oh, I miss that era where I could just be with my friends, and it wasn't work dinners or you know all of the odd socialization that takes place in your adulthood.
Hmm. Yeah. But back to the book, I suppose we should
Yeah, I know.
talk
Very
more about that.
philosophy conversations for the
Yeah,
future.
yeah. But one thing that I found really fascinating with this part of the story is you've got the girl essentially, but now the demon we're getting the demon's perspective, but we've got this millennia year old, however many millennia this demon is in terms of age, finding
Mhm.
herself a college freshman. So
Yes.
talk a little bit
Yeah.
about writing from that perspective.
Yeah. A lot of that perspective, it is always the thing in horror, the idea of possession, and it's always an interesting thing, or at least from my perspective as the writer, is I hadn't read or come across a lot of perspectives from that side, and it was something that was almost ironically funny to me, was this idea of this creature, this entity that has been essentially wanting a chance at life, to actually live it, on this plane of existence, so to speak, and then kind of gets that wonderful proverb of, like, be careful what you wish for
Hmm.
because you actually might get it. And she gets it, and then the juxtaposition of her frame of reference for what life in this plane would be, not realizing, oh, but now I'm now in a mortal body and I don't have unlimited power. I have to play by the rules of this plane of existence, and then realizing, oh, and I'm now in an era or millennia that I have no frame of reference for either. And spoiler alert, her essentially old boss, the death, so to speak, isn't exactly happy with this transition either, and says, okay, you wanted this, you get to have it. So, the idea that she's stuck going to class and having to figure out, like, how to live with money, a thing that you think, wait, yeah, most spirits would never have that concept, especially given how old, she's trying to figure out she is. It's like, money? Wait, bills? Hold on, and then the navigation of, oh, there are roommates I have to deal with. I live in a dorm,
Yeah.
just you think of all the stiflingness of it, and it just became this interesting thing of, like, yeah, it would be scary, obviously, for the people who don't know, but even for herself, the realization of, oh my gosh, I have to do this now. I don't have any other recourse. I don't have a way back. Um, so that it became something that, I mean, for me as the author, tickled me pink, of just imagining, going to class, like the first time she would have a date as a human, and going, oh, wait, what? I have to.
Yeah.
Oh man. But yeah, the roommate thing was the one that really first sparks the thought of, like, what would a demon do with roommates? Like, especially like trapped, like I said, in the plane of existence that we know as our reality. It's like, yeah, you there's only so much you could push. It's
Yeah.
not a lot of wiggle room there. So, yeah, it was a perspective I've wanted to show. Also, too, because I do think, like I said, that initial transition between end of high school to whatever, you always kind of get your summer break, and then your friends go off, and if they go to school, like, you are now by yourself in this new environment where you were maybe once the top dog, or you were this thing in your old high school years, and now you're brand new and everyone's starting on the same playing field. So um that can be a great thing for a lot of people, but for a lot of others who maybe loved their stance in high school, or who they were, the idea of starting over with people you don't know is terrifying. And the idea that you can be anyone um, can be terrifying. And the space to explore that, or realize, oh, I maybe don't know what I'm doing just because I've had 3 months off of high school. Um, I think is a big realization to have.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting way to examine different things. I mean, like when you mentioned roommates, I was thinking, shared dorm bathrooms, the food court, the dorm
Yeah.
food, life, and that kind of life, but also that feeling of not always feeling like you have a voice or have much power in any certain situation. And so now we have this demon who's really used to just like, if you even look at her wrong, she can wipe out your entire generation without thinking about it. And now she can't even, she's like dealing with her roommate who's sobbing, or she's got homework, or she's got a first date, like you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. It's definitely, and it's all stuff that I mean, I did pull from my own college experience, but also, the feelings I remember having of realizing, oh, I thought I was a big fish in a small pond, and now I'm just in a really big ocean. And am I a big fish?
Yeah.
Am I as big as I thought I was? Maybe I'm not. And the first time you might come to grips with that as a young adult or new adult is such a fascinating space to be in, because I think we see it all the time with people where that question comes up, and some people really flourish in that kind of, oh wow, I really have the space to explore, and other people withdraw, or don't even want to address that question. Or there's even the those who just will, no, I'm going to stay as this big fish, and I'm going to prove that I am this
Mhm.
fish, and I will do anything to do that. So just the idea of where this journey could go was really fascinating to me, and definitely I wanted it grounded into the, oh, when I say that, that hard hitting truth of what it means to transition from the, oh, you're just a kid, you're in high school, you'll learn someday, to the, oh no, you've had 3 months and now you're out here, good luck.
Yeah.
Is very much the, like, yeah, that is how it goes.
It really isn't just college where we have those feelings of who am I, or where do I fit in, or what happens now. I mean, I think that any transition, any move, any change can also bring about those same feelings, maybe senses of identity issues, etc. So yeah, it's not just college, although college can be a big one, and maybe the first one depending on what's going on in life before that, and that can be really disorienting and scary. And again, we can all contemplate that while we go to break. What were the times in your life where you felt the most disoriented, where you felt like you were trying to figure out your identity and where you fit in? Definitely college, but again with grad school. So for me, definitely education experiences, but I've also moved a lot of times and lived in 4 different states and had those experiences with every new job. It could just be me. I could just be overly angsty. That's entirely possible. I'll try to work through that during the break. When we come back, we'll be talking about writing a demon as a sympathetic main character. Writing a tiny terror as a sympathetic main character. Yeah. Anyway, that's what we'll be talking about when we come back. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with Victory Witherkeigh. Before the break, we were talking about transitions and how they make us feel and how they make us contemplate kind of our place in life and where we fit in and all of those deep and abiding questions. And maybe you thought about that over the break, or maybe you went and got a drink to, I'm not saying a drink, I'm just saying a drink, something to drink. Let's go back to the interview because I'm not making any sense. Returning now to the conversation with Victory. So was that kind of a helpful approach? Because you're, as I mentioned, she is a demon that has the ability to, just wipe out lots and lots of people, which she has done, and she kind of relishes in that. But so you have to take this character and write her in a way that readers are going to want to continue hearing her story. So was that one of the ways that you kind of approached writing the character?
Yeah. I very much saw it as a humbling journey for her in particular. Very much yes, it is along the same lines of she has memories of having that power and that feeling of, I was the biggest thing on the planet at one point. And I think a lot of I especially being an aunt or having kids, young kids around, I could see that developing in them, where your hero journey is very much in your mind and you think that you're it. I did like that thought of, okay, what happens when you realize there's also 8 billion other of these entities, essentially competing with you. And that's how I could see taking that perspective of, what it feels like to think you're a big fish in a small pond, like I mentioned, and then realize you're actually in an ocean. And how do you adjust to that? How do you take that knowledge that maybe you weren't as cool as you thought you were, or as right as you thought you were? Maybe your choices don't actually come from a place of confidence or stability or any of the things. Maybe they are actually choices made just spur of the moment. Maybe they're decisions that you regret because they were made too emotional, too angry, whatever it is. I think those are all very natural things to realize as a young adult, and to also pay the consequences of those choices. You don't have parents who are going to be around to intersect that anymore. You don't necessarily have the financial backing to afford to lose too often. And the realization that, hey, it actually is on you for good or for bad, I think is a lesson that I think we could transition into teens a little nicer. Whether we talk about education and the discussion of, so many young adults I know, even myself, why didn't I have classes on how to do my taxes when I was a teenager? Why, whether people liked home economics or not, it's like, it would have been nice to actually know how to cook myself and not eat cup of noodle and dorm food every day for a year, because suddenly my stomach doesn't feel so good. And I don't see a doctor, but the health services are like, oh, you are nutrient deficient. What does that mean? I have to actually pay attention to my diet because, oh, hey, I might have gained 20 pounds as a result of moving and stress. And how do I manage all this? Right. So yeah, I wanted, that was the way I found that I could take a perspective of an entity that I was saying was, hundreds of thousands of years old, and actually make it relatable, or at least have some avenue into how do I make this journey something that people actually might want to read, as opposed to just, they're all encompassing and powerful, and oh no, everyone's run for your lives. I felt like that story was not going to be as interesting.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I just went on a slight rabbit hole as you were talking, because I was thinking about when living in the dorms, and anytime the food wasn't something that I was really particularly interested in, I would just eat Lucky Charms.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah. I mean, and even that, just, whether, I remember some of my dorm mates freaking out at how much they were gaining weight, compared to before. And when some of them used to be former team athletes and now weren't doing that, and suddenly realized, oh my God, I actually have to watch what I'm eating. Like I could eat anything I wanted before, yes, but we're also, not doing 2-hour practices every day. I
exactly.
mean, high school sports to collegiate sports, like even that, whatever it was, or if you were a dancer and now you're not doing that in school because they don't have that program. I mean, things that you used to rely on to really manage your life and your body, and realizing, oh, I chose not to pursue it, or maybe the system chose that, hey, I'm not at a level that they want to take. Either way, that's a shift. And that's something that, you realize as a young adult, like, I don't remember getting lessons on this. I don't remember, the first time I was at a point a working college student. So even the idea of taxes was, huh? I used
Yeah.
to just hand this paper over. Like, what do you mean I have to fill it out now? Oh, okay. um, or even, friends of mine, or myself, having student loans and what you're signing up for, just all of these things that I realized as an adult, people just looked at me and went, well, you're 18 now.
Right.
You
Right.
legally can do this. But knowing I had no idea what I was doing at the time. What do you mean you trusted me to just sign a piece of paper and understand what I was doing and the ramifications of that? Um, yeah, there's a lot there, where I think, even as we said earlier, coming of age, there's so many of the stories talk about, I feel like, lean into, like, having confidence, understanding who you are, and developing yourself as a person. Yeah, that's great. Sometimes I wish they included the practicalness of life, which is also, we should talk about money management and retirement and what it'll mean for, like, a working career, where it's the,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe coming of age also needs to expand in categories that we include into the story. Yes, they fought a dragon, but also learned, what it meant to, like, pay taxes to the king that year as well. I don't know what it'll look like, but yes.
Right. Or even do your laundry and,
Yes, yeah.
yeah.
How many quarters do you need to budget per month? Sorry, this is a little too down the rabbit hole. I don't know if dorms still use the old coin system,
Yeah, I
or
don't think I was just gonna say I think now you can use a debit card,
a,
but
yeah.
it was quarters for me. So
Yes, yeah. Okay, you get the reference then. But yeah,
yeah.
even that discovery of, oh, I laundry? Like,
Yeah.
I have to do this? Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. You obviously could use a lot of your own college experiences for some of the demons' own experiences, but were there any particular types of research that you did for the book?
I did, yes, I did do I did do a good portion of research into the mythology, that I pulled from. So,
Hmm.
the demon's backstory, into the kind of Austronesial migrations of that era. I did a lot of research in, but also I did do research into perspectives of 18-year-olds who didn't follow the path I was on, because, I obviously went much more into a traditional university system. So I did do quite a few interviews, with people, um, who didn't, who maybe went to community college or a trade school, or those who even just stayed behind and didn't know what they were doing, and what it felt like to be on that side of watching, say, everyone move away, and they were the ones who were behind or feeling behind, versus a school experience where, it's a much smaller campus where you don't dorm and you don't have sort of the same, I guess, experiences, because you're not necessarily living with other, people you don't know. You're still maybe living at home, but are still going to school and working, and all those perspectives. I wanted to make sure that I could include a little bit of those perspectives in terms of, not just the person who's leaving and, kind of their one side of things, but also to what it meant to come home, for both sides, especially when, people have been gone for 3-4 months at a time. And, what happens when you see your old friends, but you're now on different paths, and how that feels, especially. So, yes, trying to make sure I researched at least to pull from a real frame of reference as far as the mythology was concerned, but also for the side characters or the perspectives of those who didn't follow that path, is, talking about that is a valid perspective as well, that, just because you don't follow the 4-year plan, that doesn't mean you're not 18, and that doesn't mean you don't have a transition into adulthood that is just as jarring and just as formidable as anyone else who, follows that path, and what that perspective could be, especially for both sides. I think I think that's one of the hardest realizations as a young adult, is the first time you maybe sit with people you grew up with or people you've known your whole life, and realize that you suddenly don't have a lot in common anymore. And, I think that's the hardest thing, is, when you are making friendships and the first time you're having to distrust your choice in friends, or question friendships or relationships that you're developing. The term toxic friendship is very much used now, but obviously those have been around for many, many years prior to us actually vocalizing what those are. But it is a new thing to navigate, and to realize that, I just always assumed I would, go to classes and this is how I'd meet people. And of course we'd always be friends. And, you suddenly realize, that's not the case. That's actually not how adult friendship works.
Yeah, exactly. Relationships change. I mean, no matter what happens, relationships change, but it is amazing how quickly or accelerated they feel like they change in this time period that we're talking about, when, we're off to college and things are going on. I was part of a really close-knit group of friends. There were 6 of us in high school, and we were all in the same grade except for there were siblings, a brother and a sister, and she was a year younger than us. So she was a junior to our senior, and then I was the only one that took some time off between high school and college. So I didn't go. It was supposed to be a year, turned into 2.5, whatever. But so I stayed home. So thankfully I still had little sister, and we stayed close. But those relationships started to change immediately. And except for little sister, I don't really talk to any of those friends anymore. Unfortunately, one of them died about 10 years ago, which was awful and tragic. But of the others, we communicate occasionally. But considering how amazingly close we were in high school, and we always, we all thought we would be besties forever, it just, life happens and it doesn't work out that way. But I mean, it's something to ponder as we go through life. Relationships change all the time, and circumstances change, and life happens and changes those circumstances and the way relationships move and grow and transition. So again, something else to think about. during the break. I'm just giving myself all kinds of things to contemplate during our breaks, but we are going to take that break. And when we come back, what is next in this? Is there going to be a third book? Will this be a trilogy? Is it over now with 2 books? We'll talk about that when we come back. You're tuned into the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I will be right back. Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with Victory Witherkeigh. Before the break, we were talking about relationships and how they ebb and flow and change and just transition and morph throughout life. But let's go ahead and return to the conversation with Victory. I don't want to give endings away, obviously, but it ended in ways that could go I think it could go different directions. So is there another book in this series, or what's the plan there?
I think there is. Like I said, it's for me the real goal in tackling this series, which I will admit at the start I didn't think it was a series. It's just that as the writer, I ended it and always felt like there were more questions. Mm-hmm. So very much the book kind of covers what traditionally would be considered your 4-year college experience. But, again, it came back to the coming of age thing is can I really say that then at 22, you're an adult? If I'm saying 18 isn't really adulthood, even saying 22, I mean, as an adult now, I go, that's hysterical. The idea that at 22, you would suddenly have the answers. So yeah, I do think there is another, and I think I still want to add a new voice to the idea again of maybe what I hope becomes of the genre and coming of age and young adult books is that, maybe we stop the idea that it ends at 18 and magic just happens. And maybe that there is talks about, hey, your early 20s can be just as tumultuous as your high school years, even though you're not, especially because you're now maybe not in school and suddenly you're back with peers from all walks of life and also generations who are potentially much older and dealing with a variety of people that, you probably have never had to interact with other than holiday parties or internships, but I do think there is one more. But yeah, I think it does come back to that main thing of where can I, as an author, push the idea of what coming of age means? And how can I add a different perspective than just, there's that we just have all these answers in a blink of an eye just because society now says you're an adult.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you working on a project right now?
I am. So I like to jump between projects quite a bit mentally, just because I find it helps me not feel so bogged down, especially when the writing juice is not going on a particular project. So like I said, I do think there is another book in the series. So that has been an active project for a little bit. but I also always keep the, kind of writing journal on ideas or even dreams I've had, different questions I have. So I'm always writing something in that other realm, like, oh, this idea I had, let's see how far my brain lets it go, whether it's a short story or something else. I've also been interested in doing a picture book, so even just hopping to a totally different audience.
Mm.
Um, I like the challenge of it. Of can I have a message in a book that is literally distilled in 1,000 words or less, and
Yeah.
how do you make that happen?
Right.
So yeah, I think I always kind of need something else other than a big book that I'm working on, because yes, some of the writing days we're lucky if we get 100 words, and other days you feel like I'm Superwoman. I can write forever.
Exactly.
So yes.
When it come, we've been talking a lot about kind of everyday life and I mean, coming of age and all of those things, but it's things that we encounter throughout our lives, and they are kind of everyday things, even though sometimes they feel much bigger than that. So, what is it about darker stories or writing through the lens of horror that helps you to explore some of those everyday ideas?
I think I feel like with horror and dark fantasy and thriller, the thing I've always enjoyed. I mean, this was the genre I loved as a kid. I felt I could identify with the most, and it's just because as a small child, I fortunately or unfortunately was pretty linear in my thinking and a very black and white thinker. And so I found myself often the kid who was saying the things out loud that adults were shushing me to
Mm,
say, not to say those things. Whether it was, why is Auntie looking so old all of a sudden? I would obviously paraphrase that now, but as a young kid, you don't have that filter. And
right.
I
Yeah.
found that the darker genres allowed me to be in a space where there wasn't a lot of sugarcoating. That was always something as a young reader I found I couldn't identify with or really didn't like. The flowery kind of language. It was why sort of high fantasy in that era didn't really identify with me. It felt too sugar coated, because I felt like as a kid, yeah, I didn't like certain aspects of PE, and I thought at times school was boring or hard, or people telling me I was working for something that I couldn't even picture sounded so ludicrous at such a young age, that I did feel like the darker genres allowed it to be more truthful, that we could talk about the things that hurt and the things that were disgusting or painful, and be a little more upfront about it. So as a writer now, I do uh, feel like those genres allow me to talk about the things in the journey that aren't so pretty, that
Mhm.
really don't often get a voice, or that I think a lot of people wish to gloss over in telling that linear story of, oh, I got to successful B in this straightforward fashion. And yeah, I think darker genres do allow for hopefully readers and writers to go, actually, there was a period of time in this journey where I was just going in a circle
Mhm.
and then didn't move at all. And then, it took a while for me to get back up and do this thing again. So I love that about the genre. And I hope that that always stays in the genre.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point because as children, we don't often have a filter, and it might be nice if there was more of a balance between that absolutely not having a filter, which can be hilarious sometimes, but hurtful, and
Mm-hmm.
and how we're often constructed to be adults who just don't talk about it at all, So where's that happy medium between no filter and ignoring it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because yeah, it's that line of, do I want a society where we don't have common decency? Absolutely not. I do miss that in a lot of ways. I do think a lot of what is out there, people is, are now so obstinate about standing. Well, it's the truth. Yes, but
Hmm.
is it the truth, or are you just trying to say it in the most hurtful way?
Yeah,
Because what does that really, regardless of that, is that actually helping move us forward? Is this actually
right.
getting your message across? Or are you just saying it to be, sensational? And that's where, yeah, that medium of having or being a writer in the genre, I hope the push is to, yes, remember like the reason that societies, or that justice and kind of all the overarching goals that we have as people, or that we tell kids, right and wrong, and understanding good and bad, whatever morality scheme you want to put that, like, those only happen because people are actively pushing that to happen. I think personally, as a writer, the world, the natural scheme of things is technically there isn't justice in the animal kingdom. You can't say, how can you say that there's a justice system in that?
Hmm.
Nature shows all the time that there is none. So, as a person who has young children in their life, yes, of course, I want them to grow up in a place where justice and good and righteousness has a place, and that they understand that there's a difference between, oh, I can passively sit here and watch it happen, which I think, no, if that happens, that's when we revert back to the chaos theory of nature, which is it's just haphazard and there is nothing there. Or, we actively try to work into a system that builds that. And we say, we as this species want this type of system for us to live in.
Hmm.
So that's my own personal space of it. But yeah, it is that line of, trying not to be so binary in the thinking and living in a world of gray, which
Yeah.
I do think that darker genres allow for that discussion of it. Actually, humans are really gray. It's uh, there are other authors who share that sentiment as well, and who really showcase that very well. But yes, I hope to add another voice to the it isn't so linear and so binary thinking
Hmm.
that we can be one or the other and that's it. It's the no, a lot of us live in the middle, and there should be more stories like that.
Sure. Yeah. I do like what Victory was saying about being less linear and less binary, so more non-linear, more non-binary, because yeah, there is black and white in the world, but there's so very much gray, so much gray, so very much gray. There's so much gray. Let's go ahead and take our final break of this episode. When we come back, what Victory has been reading. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back. Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast. Before the break, Victory was talking about why she likes writing darker books, maybe horror books as they are, writing everyday events from those darker perspectives, fitting that into that horror genre. So now let's go back to the conclusion of my conversation with Victory. So, what have you been reading?
Oh, So with the chaos of, I will say, the world,
Mhm.
I have been trying to push myself actually to read more small print or independent authors as of late.
Hmm.
Um, I, in doing research for some projects, I was recently in Hawaii and I picked up a novel called Dragon Fruit. I don't need to Google the author really quick, but it's a small press and it's about uh, Pacific Islander mythology, dark fantasy. I would say is the overall first couple pages view of it.
Hmm.
Um, I'm trying to look up the author right now, but it is a nice fantasy young adult novel that I appreciate being from, a Pacific Islander perspective that I know,
Yeah.
and from a very small press that I can feel good, purchasing from. Uh, Here, Dragon Fruit by Micaiah Lucier, I believe, Lucier.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a novel that I have high hopes for, and I can't wait to. It has dragons in it, so
Nice.
obviously a little different than my own genre. But yes, I'm very much trying to push for like small press, trying to give chance to other authors like myself who are not in the was it big four, five in
Hmm.
publishing.
Hmm. So it's not actually about dragon fruit, the fruit. Just
Um, it is. They do reference the fruit, but
okay.
because dragon fruit does grow on the Pacific Islands. So
Yes.
I thought it was an interesting title to have, given that it's about dragons. And
Yes.
I'm going, wait a minute, are we not talking about? Oh, we are talking about the fruit. Okay, we're doing a little double entendre there for us.
I like it. Um, if people want to get to know you a little bit better or know more about your books, share your website and any social media that you're active on.
Okay. So the best place to find information on me is on my own website. It is victorywitherkeigh.com. Social media is ever changing,
Yes.
but the links are on there as well. I am currently on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. But any and all social media updates are put there. But really, the website is the best place to find short stories. I've got sections there with free short stories, as well as those in other anthologies I've been part of, as well as links to my books.
Perfect. Thank you. Victory, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to make sure you highlighted, especially in terms of the new book, The Demon?
I think we've covered most of it. The only thing I'll say is get your copy of The Demon or The Girl on my site. Both are out on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, all the major platforms, as well as Kindle, and I believe Barnes and Noble's Nook as well. But yeah, other than that, just I hope you give the books a chance and feel free to come along.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk to me about both books, but especially The Demon. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me again. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you once again to Victory for joining me to talk about The Demon. I um I was a little leery of this book because the demon now, as we said, is fully in charge of the body. That it was the girl in the first book, and I thought it was it was it was a little hard to read that first book for me and watch the struggle that she was having with this demon and this deal that her family had made, and her family is not a great family of origin. And so to know that now the demon was in charge, I was like, well, I was curious, how is Victory going to present this? How are we going to see this demon being the protagonist? And I think she really did a good job of giving us this, not exactly a fish out of water story, not exactly a coming of age story, but a little bit of both, and presenting it in a way that I wasn't I can't say I was necessarily rooting for the demon because it's a demon, but kind of rooting for the demon. I mean, it's hard to explain. So if you like darker genres, if you like horror, then, and even if you haven't read The Girl, there's now 2 of them you can read. You can have 2 to read. This is something that you should check out. And it's not horror in the like really scary, icky factor. You know me, I wouldn't read it if it was. So not graphic, not icky, not nightmare inducing, but horror because of the darker aspects of it, for the nature of the fact that the demon is the main character, is the protagonist, and we get to know her backstory, and we watch her struggle, and we're trying to figure out how all of this is going to work out. And so you should definitely read it just to find out how it's all going to work out. But now I'm also intrigued, where are we going to go if there does turn out to be a 3rd book? What part of life are we going to be exploring through the eyes of this demon? And is the girl going to be more, are they going to kind of share the body? I don't know. I do not know the answer to that. I am intrigued though. So if this is a genre that you appreciate, definitely check out both The Girl and The Demon. Even if you're not usually a big fan of horror, again, I'm your litmus test, because I don't do well with the ick factor, and this is very low on the ick factor. It's not really even high on the eek factor, so just, exploring those everyday events through a darker lens, and that is appropriate for the main character and the subject matter. So definitely check this out if you or someone you know is interested in this genre or this idea of a demon going to UC Berkeley and what that entails. Thank you again to Victory for joining me. Thank you, as always, for joining me. Hope you will join me for the next interview, which I just did today. So my brain is a little confused as to who I'm actually talking about, because I'm posting this episode, but I spoke with Yasmin earlier. I have another returning author this week, or next interview. Yasmin Ongo joined me to talk about Not What She Seems, a standalone novel. It's thriller, it's suspense, it is well, you're going to hear more about it when she comes back. When she was on the first time, we talked about the 3rd book in her Nina Knight trilogy. So that was fun. It was kind of weird to come into that trilogy at the end, but now we get to talk about a standalone book, Not What She Seems. And I always enjoy when Yasmin joins the podcast. She is a lot of fun and a great person to talk to. So join me for that interview. See, even Frost is joining us for that conversation. He was asleep. He is no longer asleep. Dad woke him up, which is okay, because it's probably time to go outside and go to the bathroom. And that has nothing to do with what's going on the screen next to me. Sorry, Yasmin. Yes, so Not What She Seems, next interview. Please join me for that. Yasmin is a lot of fun to talk to, and I had a great time talking to her once again. As always, thank you so much for joining me. If you are a fan of this podcast, there are a few things that you can do to help the algorithm. One, of course, is to like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you are either listening to or watching this episode on. That really helps. Another thing that really helps not only the podcast, but the authors that you love, is to leave a review. Leaving a positive review is so very helpful for the algorithm and is greatly appreciated by me, by the authors. So yeah, just takes a few minutes. If you're an overthinker like I am, don't overthink it too much. Just a positive review of even one sentence can definitely help. So thank you in advance if you plan on doing that. Thank you in retrospect if you already have. Greatly appreciated. You can follow the podcast on social media. You can find it on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok. I love hearing from you. So follow the podcast. Let me know what you're reading. Ask any questions that you have. And I love chatting with people who know the podcast, and I'm happy to answer questions or engage in conversation. So come find the podcast on social media. In the meantime, hope you're having a great weekend. Hope that you are, I don't know, if you need to be productive, being productive. If you need just to chill out and do nothing, doing that. Maybe it's a combination thereof. Whatever it is, I hope it's the weekend that you need, and I hope that the weekend is giving you plenty of time to get yourself lost in a good book. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to